Okay. Hello, class or audience. Um, the topic I decided to go in a little bit to depth in is homelessness. My region was North America, so I focus primarily on the States. I go a little bit into detail on South America. However, there was more research on North America, and it seemed like it would provide the most substance and relevance to those who are listening. Basically, over here, I go into detail about how homelessness stems from people who come across economic hardships, something as like veterans who don't get enough support or have PTSD, and then there's like a snowball effect essentially that leads them towards not having a place to live, um, and basically that leads to them having a negative mindset towards life. Over here we have a pie chart basically breaking down the I guess categories of homeless people. So as you can see, the majority, pretty much 50%, are due to mental illness, and then 25% of chronic substance abuse. So mental health was one of the major contributors to this, and the main reason the mental health is an issue is because basically I there's a it's almost hard to explain, but the way society is founded, the foundation, there's basically no resources that benefit the homeless. Not no resource, but little resources. Essentially, there's a negative stigma that has to do with homelessness. People kind of look down upon them, and that once they do become homeless, once they have a financial hardship, become bankrupt or something along those lines, there are little outlets that'll help them go through. This right here, the downward spiral, is a little case study. It talks about an individual named John, your average middle-aged white male. He had I believe two children, maybe three, two children. He was having a normal life, quote normal. Um, and then he got a divorce, had some hardships through that, and then one thing led to another, where his alcoholism and his negative mental state led him to becoming homeless. And then it talked about how he had a minor cut on his shin when he was sleeping on the streets one night. Basically, this led to him getting an infection, and instead of having the healthcare or ability to go get it fixed, it got worse and worse and worse, just as the homelessness effect does. And he passed out unconscious in a park one day from the infection, and some runners passed by him. And long story short, they saved his life because they brought him to the emergency room. If he hadn't had if he hadn't been living in a city where there were a populace that would walk by him, he would have easily been dead from just a simple cut infection. Um, which kind of stems back to the idea that homelessness is I forget where I was going with that. I apologize. Let's move on to is there a good place to be homeless? Essentially, there is no real answer to that. One of the things that I found was that New York City and Los Angeles, people like that, they had high rates of quote profitability for homeless, but that directly stems to the fact that there's a higher population. So, and you can see like Florida, New York, California. There's a high city of or a high population of homeless, but that's just because there's a high population in general. Um, the homeless population generally tend to go towards the urban areas where there's more people to give money. That was one of the trends that I found. Also, another trend that I found was that African Americans tend to be the most displaced in terms of homelessness. Um, a lot of that, from my research, stemmed off the idea that we essentially America was founded off slavery and all that, and there's still mental racism and other aspects like that that add to the foundation of poor perspective, I guess, towards the homeless. So this pie chart kind of shows this part right here. This is the African American population who went to emergency shelters, I believe, in 2014. So there's definitely a positive correlation between that, and it's unfortunate to see, but it's one of those hardships that's just a fact. Moving on, so over here, um, I kind of did a lot of research on people who slept in the streets instead of people who, because technically, someone who's going from house to house who has friends and family, they're technically homeless because they don't have a solidified place that they go back to on a day-to-day basis. But I liked more so the idea of people who actually slept on the streets and were homeless and had economic hardships. Um, and then back to the idea of that snowball effect. So they sleep on the streets and they have the most heart because they sleep on the street and um, they go through all this negativity and they have to push through all their hardships. But there's that negative stigma again that dwells them downwards. They don't have the aspiration or the tools to get back up on their feet. So you ask yourself, why don't you just go get a job? Why don't you go get a haircut? Well, most businesses don't want to deal with someone who's been sleeping on the street. They smell, they're poorly groomed. Instead of helping them, most people tend to just kind of discourage them. Um, that was one of the things that I thought was a little bit sad, but it's a cruel reality, unfortunately. And yeah, they have lots of tenacity. They're out there sleeping on the streets, not being able to. I mean, they're essentially perceived as bad people, but in reality, they're not. They're just human beings who fell into majority. Don't get me wrong. There are some who are actual bad human beings, but the majority just fall into hardships, and then they're not able to get back on their feet. Um, And I liked this picture. It's a spray painting of it says keep your coins. I want change, and it depicts a homeless person. So that kind of sparked my interest. I went into a little bit more detail on how we should make change as individuals and as a society right here. We should contact our policymakers. Um, Even in our daily lives, just spread a more positive outlook on homeless people. Um, that's what I talk about right here. And then over here, I give links and outlets for ways to communicate or even donate to end homelessness. And thank you. That would be it.